Hello, I'm Dan Ware, and this is Frankly Franklin, the program where we talk about, frankly, Franklin. And with me today is the former Simpson County Sheriff, Rudy Deweese. Welcome, Rudy.
Glad to be here, Danny.
Glad you could come in and do this. We had to reschedule a time or two on my account, not on Rudy's, and I'm glad it worked out. You know, Rudy, I've been talking over the last few weeks with several 90-year-olds, so it's good to have a young person on the program for a change.
There you go.
Do you mind me asking, how old are you?
Today, I'm 74. Tomorrow, I'm 75.
Oh, right on a birthday, yeah. You got a big celebration planned?
Oh, yeah, I'm going to get up, I hope.
Can you blow out 75 candles?
No. Doubt if I can blow one out.
Yeah. Well, now you haven't been in the public eye as much lately as you were at one time. Is your health holding up fairly well? How have you been since?
I haven't had a good year so far.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Of course, I have a breathing problem, got emphysema, and, and then in February I got pneumonia, and they like to got me. That's all it was.
Oh, my.
Yeah. It's hard to get over it, and, but I'm getting some strength back, and I've got this week I couldn't even get out of the chair.
Really? Well, I'm glad to hear you're building your strength back. You know, it may not be good, but isn't it better than the alternative?
Yes, a whole lot better. At least you're above ground.
That's right. Well, now, Rudy, if you look in the Franklin phone book, there's a lot of Deweeses in there. Are you all one big brood? Are you all related to one another, or is there that set and this set, or
it's
what?
all one family.
Oh, really? Yeah.
I have two brothers here, and Walter and Willie, and all of them are our family.
I see. So you guess your family goes back several generations here in this county, or
we
did
moved
you all
here,
move here from somewhere else?
We moved here from Edmonson County in, I believe it was 1933, when they come in and bought all that land up for the national park up there.
Oh, okay, to set up Mammoth Cave, and so y'all moved down this way.
The Gentry's, Neil and their father and grandfather moved down. We was neighbors there, and so we moved down here.
Yeah.
We was neighbors down here.
Well, now I knew that about the Gentrys, but I didn't realize that was true for the Deweeses,
we all came
too.
down at the same time.
I see, yeah. Well, you know, some people, you ask them their background, and they say, well, you know, I'm Scots, or I'm Irish, or German, or whatever. Deweese, do you know what is that?
French and Indian.
French and Indian, okay. Did not know that, okay. Do you all know much about your family tree
I don't.
going on back? Or?
I don't.
Yeah.
I have a brother that does.
Kind of interested in the genealogy. Yeah. Well, now, if I'm remembering correctly, one of those Deweese boys made a preacher, but that's not you, is it?
It's not me.
But now, you had a fairly long career in law enforcement.
Yes.
And we're going to talk about that a little bit, but that's probably not the only thing you've done for a living. Before you got into police work, what sort of work did you do?
Well, going way back, started out in a truck stop business. I had a truck stop at Woodburn, and stayed there till 1963 when I-65 opened up. We happened to move it just before it opened up.
Yeah.
And then I started working for the preacher in the family.
Okay.
He had a lumber company here, and so
yeah.
I worked with him till I went in law enforcement business.
What, if you were in the truck stop business before the interstate was built, how did I-65 coming through Simpson County, how did that change this county, would you say?
Just cut it off. No traffic.
As far as back on the road through town?
Right.
Yeah. So I guess if you weren't right at an interchange, your business pretty much
is out of luck.
Yeah. Well, but before that came, I mean, did you have a restaurant as part of your? Did you serve meals and?
Yes, my mother-in-law did.
Yeah, big Sunday crowd, or?
Yeah. Oh, of course, she always had a crowd wherever she went with the restaurant, and she did real well with it.
Well, was getting into law enforcement something that had always been in the back of your mind, or did you think when you were a kid, that's not what I'm going to do?
No, I didn't think anything about it when I was a kid, but after I got older, I got it on my mind, and
Mm-hmm.
well, that's actually after I left the truck stop, it got to
Mm-hmm.
getting on my mind about it.
So now your first job as a police officer was with the city, if
Yes,
I'm not
that's
mistaken.
Chief of Police,
Okay.
1974 to 78.
To 78. Okay. And then after 78, you moved over to the county at
County,
that point,
that's
right?
juvenile officer.
Okay. And that was working out of the Sheriff's Department.
Office, yes.
Okay. Did you find that the work was similar, whether you were working for the city or the county, or was there a big difference?
Well, you know, really, as a juvenile officer, basically I was more or less my own boss. But
Mhm.
City, you got a whole lot of bosses, and
Yeah.
because I didn't have a problem with them, but it's we were real busy at the city, and that was back when the apartments were going strong over there, you know,
Right.
and it's unbelievable the amount of business we had over there.
Yeah. And we're operating out of much smaller quarters than what there is now, and
Well, I had
less
13,
equipment.
had 13 officers counting myself, and
Uh-huh.
it was unheard of. It's
Yeah, kept you running, I'm sure. Well, when you were a juvenile officer, did you find that it was harder or easier to work with young people?
I
over
truly
adults?
loved it.
You did?
I absolutely loved it,
Yeah.
and I really.
Do you
really
ever
enjoyed
have any contact with any kids that you dealt with who are all grown up
it.
now?
All the
Do they
time,
say,
all the time.
do you remember me, or does that happen to you?
Yeah, I have some good deals with that, and it's back then, if it messed up, they went to
Shipped them away from here, right?
right.
Yeah.
And, you know, the boys went over to Butler County, and it was a beautiful place. Hell, it was like a lodge. I mean,
Oh, really? I never saw the place over there, yeah.
it's beautiful. And
Yeah.
the girls,
Mm-hmm.
I take them up northern part of Kentucky,
Yeah.
which the state is using the place we put them as a state penitentiary right now.
Are they?
Man,
Okay.
it just break my heart to leave them girls.
I
up
can
there.
imagine, yeah, yeah,
And it was awful.
yeah. Well, now after you served as juvenile officer for, what, a term?
4 years.
Okay, then did you run for sheriff after that?
Yes, I did.
Okay, all right. And so after you got to be sheriff, did you continue to handle juvenile cases, or did you have somebody set aside like you were to do that?
There was Gary Hodges came back from school,
Uh-huh,
and he went to work for the police department.
right.
And he eventually we got him worked into it.
I see. Well, now, you said when you were at the city, y'all had a pretty heavy caseload.
Yes.
The sheriff, he's got a lot of more ground to cover, it being the county, but there aren't as many businesses. How's the sheriff's workload as far as the crime part of it? Now, I know there's papers to serve and all that, but how does that compare with being in town?
Well, it's a different type police work, the county and the city is. Of course, we'd have more fights in a week to go to at the city than we'll have in a year in the county.
Mm-hmm.
And that type of stuff is altogether different. Now, of course, there's a whole lot of work that the sheriff does that don't go on at the city. Like,
Yeah, like for the
collecting
courts.
taxes, and
Right.
you got to work both courts and stuff like that, you know.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And that now, the sheriff is an elected officer. The police chief was an appointed.
Right.
So, but for a long time, the sheriff, under our Constitution, could not succeed himself in office.
That's true.
And that changed while you were in the first time, right?
That's right.
Okay. Why do you think it was that for so long they didn't want a sheriff to be reelected to a second straight term, but other people could? What was the thinking of it? Do you know?
Well, you know, a sheriff's got a lot of power if he wants to use it.
Uh-huh.
And if that wasn't what it was, I don't know. But anyhow,
Just thought maybe if he stayed for straight through, one man could get too much
yeah.
authority, yeah. But as times got more modern, I guess they felt like we could.
Well, the last time we worked on that thing from 1949, I say we, the sheriffs is in office, and we finally got it worked in on a bill with the governor. So we might have never got it done.
That's right, because the governor couldn't succeed
That's right.
himself until this passed as an amendment.
He went in
Yeah.
same time we did.
Right, right. So you were the first Simpson County Sheriff who was eligible to succeed
I was
himself.
the first one to come back to back.
Right, and then you were able to win a third election, were you
Right.
not? Right, okay. So only since your time in office has that been possible.
That's true.
Before that, a sheriff would have to, if he wanted to be sheriff again, he'd have to wait 4 years.
That's true.
So you brought me a list here of the sheriffs that we have had since 1883, it looks like, which is over 100 years ago. Now, we have had some that would serve 4 years and lay out 4 and serve again.
That's right.
But now you're down here for a total of 12 years, looks
Right.
like. Has anybody else served a longer term so far than you?
10 is the closest.
Okay, so you've got the record for the most years in office.
That's true.
So you got some one-time people here and some 2, and one other fellow besides you's down 3 times.
Right.
All right,
His first term was a 2-year term.
okay. And then and there's a pretty good time spread between that.
The last 2 was a long time.
Yeah, now this fellow's name was McClanahan,
Right.
and that McClanahan name is a well-known name
It sure is.
in Simpson County. I don't know this
I didn't know.
W.S. McClanahan. I assume he may be kin to some of the ones that are, closer to my time. Well, of these other people on this list, did you know several of them? Most of them?
Well,
or how far back?
Start up there with Garrett. I think he in 1938 to
Yeah,
42.
right.
Well, that's when I basically started remembering anybody.
Okay.
But from then on, I didn't
So Dick
know.
Chavan, you would have known him.
Oh, yeah.
Tax Briggs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tax Briggs worked for me
Oh, really?
when I was sheriff.
Oh, okay. No, he was a deputy and
He was
a bailiff?
Bailiff.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. And Bud Laney, I think I told you before we started, he was the first person that ever gave me a traffic ticket. Joe James, Joe Moss, and Bud Laney again, John Belcher. Of course, John's still around. And Mr. Groves.
Right.
Now, Henry did an interview with Mr. Groves earlier this year, and he's 97 now.
That's right.
And this was back in the spring. He was in a hurry to get the interview done because he had to go break his garden. He was going to get on the tractor.
The man raises 13 acres of tobacco.
Isn't that something? Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
He
Well,
was
now-
69 years old when he got elected sheriff, and I guarantee he'd outrun half the 16-year-olds. I've never seen anything like it.
Well, now, he told some stories when he was here about chasing some felons through some cornfields and
Oh, yeah.
stuff like that. Have you got any stories that you remember, stories you can repeat? Now, remember, we got women and children in the audience, but anything sticks out over that's either, funny, sad, or unusual that just...
Are you talking about me or Mr.
I'm talking
Groves?
about you. Talking about you during your time. I know one story that Mr. Groves was telling about. He said he had one guy that he had to take him to Eddyville, and said as soon as he got in the car, Groves was saying, "Now, if you behave, I'll take these cuffs off, let you ride in the front seat." And the fellow said, "No, sir, Sheriff, I want to do it the hard way." So Mr. Groves, "All right, we'll do it the hard way." So he left him trussed up, and he talked about some break-ins out in the county and looking for people hiding in cornfields. So I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but if anything comes to mind, share it with us.
You're talking about those handcuffs. I picked up prisoners all over the United States. I
Yeah.
never cuffed one but one in my life.
Really?
And, well, I didn't cuff him. If I went to state pen, federal pen, and got him, and the FBI had him cuffed.
Had him cuffed, so he
And
stayed that way, I guess.
They took their cuffs off, and I didn't put mine on
Oh,
because
okay.
I knew he had AIDS, and I wasn't touching him.
Okay.
And so I never cuffed anybody.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Danny, I got all kinds of stories. But if I get started on them,
I think we might be here for a while.
right? And
Well, let me ask you
I
this.
should have kept a scrapbook.
Yeah, I guess so. Well, let me ask you this. Were you ever in any tense spots where you felt like that fellow's got a gun and he just might shoot me with it before I can do anything to him? Did you ever really feel you were in that dangerous situation?
No, Danny, I never was worried personally about me, only maybe one time.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had some bad moments, but wasn't me that I've worried about. One time a man had himself and his two little girls barricaded in with a truckload of guns in there, and he wouldn't talk to nobody but me, and I had talked to him through a door.
Mm-hmm.
And finally got him out of there, and then I had another one where a boy had a gun to his head. I talked to him 4.5 hours. Hardest work I ever done in my life. And
but you were finally able to
yeah.
talk him down. Yeah.
And I never worried about it. I might have should have worried about it, but I never worried about myself.
Well, I guess if you thought about it too much, it might have interfered with being able to do what you had to do. So.
Could have been.
Yeah.
But you know, basically, I knew everybody in the county.
Mm-hmm.
And basically everybody knew who I was. And I knew who to kind of watch and who not to watch, you know.
Right.
And we had a call out in the county one time. A man had went off now, absolutely went off.
Mm-hmm.
And kids was upstairs, and he done shot hole through the ceiling with a shotgun. Naturally, I got there first. I opened that front door. He throwed a whole couch at me. I mean, by himself. I said,
yeah.
My God, this man is something else.
Yeah.
And but I had 2 trips out there with him, but it's the last time he had shot himself, and but it shot himself in the head and it just ricocheted off.
Oh my. Well now, back when I was in the newspaper business, a lot of times I'd have to work some late nights. And you know, you get done working, you're kind of hungry, you want to go get some pie or something. Mm-hmm. And 12:30 or 1 o'clock, I'd see you out, you know, at some of these places that stay open late. Are you still a night owl like you used to be?
Danny, I've been going to bed at 2 to 2:30 for about 28 years. And when I was working, I'd go to bed at that time, and I'd get up 20 minutes after 6.
Pretty short night.
But you can live with it.
Yeah.
And now I sleep a little longer.
Do you?
But
I don't blame you.
still go to bed like I did.
Yeah.
But
I think if I'd been you, I'd try to get me a little cat nap after I ate lunch.
you know, sometimes I do that.
Yeah.
But you know, a lot of times I'd have to get up on that 4 hours I was supposed to be sleeping and go.
Yeah. Call came in, you had to go, didn't you?
Yeah. You know, and you know, I'd catch that phone before it ever rang, the whole rang, and it would wake my wife up, and I'd leave and come back before and she never noticed.
She'd still be asleep, didn't know.
Which
well,
is
that's
good.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
But if I was going to be out longer than not get back before she got up, well, I'd have the city police to call down there and tell her where I was at.
Mm-hmm.
But
Right. Well, now, I ran into you one day not long ago at the townhouse,
mm-hmm.
and we were reminiscing about some past elections. And several of us sitting at the table were talking, trying to think, well, now let's see, what year would that have been? Would that have been, let's see, sometime in the 70s. And Rudy just said 1973. No hesitation. And everybody kind of looked and said, well, I guess that's right. And Rudy pointed out that up until this past year, every local election that we'd had from 73 to 90-something, he'd been on the ballot. So in the time we got left, I want to talk a little bit about elections, because we've had some hotly contested ones, and you've won some and you've lost some, but haven't any of them been rained out, have they?
No, they haven't.
No rainouts. But I'm going to name some things I've always heard,
Okay.
and you tell me whether you think there's anything to it or not.
All right.
I've heard if you want to win an election in Simpson County, that it helps to come from a big family. Is that true or false?
Well, back earlier, I'm sure it was probably true. I don't think it has much to do with it now.
Okay. I've also heard it said that it helps if you go to a big church with lots of members, because churches tend to vote a lot alike in blocks, that if some people in a church are going to vote one way, a lot of people in that church will vote that way.
The churches can make you or break you.
Okay, so there is some truth to that
That's
saying.
right.
Okay. And, but is that done just by word of mouth? I mean, churches don't ever have
No,
people
I think-
electioneering it from the pulpit. They don't do that, so how does that work?
I don't really know, but they get it done.
Gets the word around, okay. All right. What about campaigning door to door? Now, I'll give you two examples here. It makes my wife nervous. She'd rather come home and find your card in the door. That conversation, she's just not real at ease with that. I've had other people in my family that say, well, I've known old so-and-so for 30 years, but he didn't ask me to vote for him. So if he didn't ask me, I'm not going to. So that eye contact and the door-to-door, how much and when is it too much?
Up to the last 2 or 3 terms, door-to-door meant a whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'll tell you how I did the door-to-door deal.
Okay.
I would go, and if I seen the people, I'd talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
I never knocked on a door. I put my card up there because, you know, they may be eating supper. They may,
Okay, so you wouldn't knock?
I would not.
Okay.
And I would not do nothing on Sunday.
Okay.
And but now, door-to-door don't mean that much anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Elections have changed a whole lot.
Okay. What about yard signs and things like that versus an ad in a newspaper or on the radio?
Well, I wish to get rid of the yard signs totally. You know, if all the candidates just sign a little piece of paper,
Mm-hmm.
that runs in a whole lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these yard signs cost $6 or $7 a piece,
Right.
and that runs into money. And of course, your paper is expensive anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I know, you know, first time I run, I put a little piece in there that is running,
Mm-hmm.
and then I put a little piece when I
Do
got
you
done.
think that changes anybody's minds, or do you think their minds are pretty well made up, regardless of what the newspaper ad might say?
I think some newspaper is fine. Now, I like the deal on the TV deal, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I like that all right.
Mhm.
I think when a man turns on to listen to the news, he's going to hear somebody. It's just before the news.
Right. And that's the time you
And
want.
that's what I
Yeah.
always try to get.
Yeah. Just can't have it for everybody.
the
Well,
old-
when you were the sheriff, you were an election officer and were involved in putting elections on. And when I was doing some reporting for the radio and the newspaper, we'd always have to run a story about how many people were expected to vote.
Right.
And people sitting around the courthouse would always kind of handicap the race and say, well, I hear so-and-so's coming on strong, or so-and-so's fading, you know. How do you know? I mean, were you just making that stuff up, or you hear stuff drinking coffee, or what? How do you handicap a race?
Well, you got to be out and about to do it,
Yeah.
and you just listen to what people are talking about, and it's
Okay. So you don't really have to prompt them. You just
No.
have to listen.
and that's 90% of luck if you do it. I'll tell you, I was ashamed of our primary this year with 28% of people out. Now,
That was a low
That's a
turnout.
disgrace.
Yeah.
It's the lowest I've ever seen in my life.
Well, let me ask you this. Our registration is overwhelmingly Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
Yet we, in the last 40 years, have voted for Republican presidential candidates as much as we have Democrats.
Well,
Well,
let me
what's
tell
that?
you a little secret you may
Okay.
not know.
Okay.
There's about half, well, it's not half, but there's, I'd say, a fourth of the people that's registered Democrats are really Republicans.
Okay.
But if they register Republican, they don't get to take part in a local primary.
Because it's decided generally in the Democrat
and in the
primary.
general election, they can vote for whoever they want to vote for.
Okay.
So
So they figure
they're-
they got a lot to gain and nothing to
That's
lose?
exactly
Is that,
right.
yeah.
Anybody in a small county like this ought to be, if it's a Democratic county, they
Well-
need to register Democrat.
Now, I always heard when Bud Grove was the clerk and was registering people to vote, Bud wasn't above encouraging them to register
Well,
as
I wasn't either,
Democrats.
Daddy. You know, I've registered a lot of people every time.
Yeah.
I they said, get down to that, and they
But
said,
if
well,
you
how do I
said-
register? I said, if you want to vote for me, you're going to have to register
Because
Democrat.
it's going to be, yeah, you did have a good argument to
That's
make.
right.
I'll give you that. Yeah. Well, I see by the clock in the back of the room that our time has slipped away.
Has it?
It has, and we both managed to stay awake the whole time, even though we're doing it right after
We've
lunch.
done good.
We've
Let
done
me
all
say
right.
one thing. The
Yes,
first
sir.
time I won my election, there was
Yeah.
11 people running in it.
11.
11.
Whew.
I got 34% of the votes, and wasn't nobody close to me.
Yeah.
But you get up in the morning, you didn't know which way to go.
No, with 11 in it, that's right. Yeah, yeah. Well, you don't see, I guess the last time we had that many we was talking about Bud Grove. When he retired, we had about that many running for that office.
Yeah.
But in the last few, it hadn't drawn that many.
I've had 11, 9, 7, 5,
Mm-hmm.
and then 4,
Yeah.
5, something like
Well, now
that.
you've got some children, and one of them has run for public office. Did
Yes.
he come to you and say, "Daddy, what's your advice?" Or were you consulted about that?
Not a whole lot. You know, he wrote probably 100,000 miles on me while I was sheriff, and I knew this would eventually happen.
Uh-huh.
And of course, Brent worked away from here ever since he got out of school just about. And, he basically got his foot in the door.
I see. All right. Well, we're all going to be watching to see what the future brings. I hope your strength continues to come back and your
Well,
health
no.
holds up.
Hope that hip gets better.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, we had Mr. Groves on when he was 97. So you're going to be 75 tomorrow.
Right.
You edge on up toward 90, 95.
You
You're
gonna
getting
do it
in my
again?
range again, so you call me, all right?
I'll do it.
All right. I've been talking with former Simpson County Sheriff Rudy Deweese. Now, when his name was on the ballot, it always said Gr. quote Rudy. Now, here's your chance. You want to let people in on that, or you want to remain a man of mystery till you come back for your 90th birthday
Well, actually,
interview?
the GR stands for my name, but didn't nobody know my name. So
Yeah.
that's the reason that Rudy was in
Was
it.
that what you were always
I
called?
always called that,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. Well, I'm not going to force you to tell me, because
Thank you.
if I did, I'd probably need a real good insurance agent. That's
Right.
all I'm going to say. All right, our thanks to Rudy Deweese for being our guest today. We have 2 more segments coming up on this program. Please stay tuned.